quite magical and consistent in all the groups I'm participating in these discussions is really around the employees becoming the biggest advocates for these tools. In many cases in customer service, tools that made team members really nervous when they first heard about them,
Yeah.
and rather than them being kind of their teammate, that really unlocks their ability to do the magic that they do.
Yeah, you made a really good point about an internal sell for the employee being, hey, let's take away, your friction, let's reduce your administrative burden, which I think is a great sell to bring employees on board this experience. Um, and you also talked about, towards the very end, you talked about, there's hesitation, there's a lot of like anxiety, nervousness around adopting something like this. And that's usually what we've seen across the industry too, where the minute people talk about, hey, we want to deploy AI for these use cases, I think automation in people's minds equates to like headcount elimination, right? And so I like that, reducing administrative burden is like one way to bring employees along that experience. But I think the other side to this is, as much as we're helping them reduce administrative burden, it just means that the employees now have to focus more on the complex use cases, the more emotional high stakes use cases, right? What that means is they have to upskill themselves if they've not handled that as the primary use case for the time that they've spent in serving the customers. And so how do you think about addressing that fear of, I wouldn't maybe fear is the wrong word, let's just say change management again, right? So the change management that it takes to upskill an employee for the complex use cases that is now going to become primary for them.
I think it's a great question, but I would say that I've worked across a few different domains where, user security has been at the core of what you're trying to do. And at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to, whether it's town halls, whether it's regular updates on, how your organization is looking at these technologies. I think what's really interesting in all of the healthcare and med tech spaces that I participate in, this is a common challenge, right? You have a situation where people are nervous about technology deployment. And in some cases, I don't even think it's because they are fearful of technology, but you're hearing a lot of information out there right now about, deployments that are failing or how to do it right, what to avoid. And I think that really what employees are looking for is confidence in the approach. And I think that's really, being curious, letting people ask questions whenever a new technology is being discussed in any environment, I think is really important. And having that space for employees to, ask within their teams and have those teams raise any additional questions is really the best way that I think organizations can face this. Because let's face it, this is something that is very unnerving in customer service, an industry that hasn't been that focused on technology. It's really been about record keeping, accuracy of the workflows or processes that you're discussing, ensuring that the person leaves that interaction satisfied. But really, this is about, deploying technology that in many cases the organizations that they work within may not be that skilled in or experienced in. And so I think that adds to a bit of the uncertainty. And I think it's just saying it out loud. I think uncertainty is normal, but I think having forums where people can express their questions, their curiosity, and making sure that I think organizations are doing a good job, allowing people to do lunch and learns and things like that to really get more skilled. But what's clear, I think, to all employees in all domains is that this is here to stay. And so how can you get on board and not just get on board, but how can you show up differently so that we can be really successful at how we adopt. I think that's the sky's the limit with how we approach these things. And so I think just allowing teams to express that. And hey, I think some team members may say, I'm not interested in this anymore. Or I don't, that wasn't what I liked, this type of experience in my job. I'm not really interested in that. And that's okay too. I think employees need to decide, how comfortable they are with these things. But giving it a chance and starting with curiosity, I think is really the best way for us to bring our teams along on these, adoptions. I think you're going to see a lot of technology discussions across customer service.
Yeah. So the employee experience EX is one side to it, right? Like you've brought up some great points on how to get the employees on board. What does it really take to convince the executives who are skeptical about, deploying AI or investing in AI solutions? So yes, you can talk about how it's going to change the customer experience. You can talk about how it's going to change or revamp the employee experience. But a lot of organizations and a lot of leaders are very risk averse, right? And so in organizations where the risk culture is pretty strong, what's the internal sell for the executives to invest in AI?
I think this is really important for any leader is to know your audience and know how to describe the change you're going after or the technology you're exploring. At the end of the day, you really do want an executive team to buy into the direction of a team or of a organization. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to your ability to prove it out. I think that for me, whenever I'm going to my executive team in any of the roles that I've had, I'm always starting with a data set, understanding what ultimately I need to present on the topic, not over communicating, keeping it really crisp on whether our use cases are, what problems we're solving, whether or not we're entering proofs of concept and what we hope to get out of that. But it's really about communication. I think for me, using AI sometimes can be your best friend at being able to convey the right message using any of the open AI options that you like to engage with. For me, I've gone round for round, with chat on how I might want to engage a problem or look at something. And this can be at work, in life, in general. But I think when you're speaking with your executive teams, really succinct storyline and what is that outcome? What are we going to get to? Because again, I think in any company, the execs are there to protect our, customers or patients in whatever domain you're in. And it has to really prove the value. And it has to also be really exciting. Because I think there's limitless potential with the technology today to unlock value, to really double down on our experiences for our customers and patients. And so I think it's really about presenting and showing. In my case, I talk in many environments about longitudinal context and needing to, query, Chat GPT to help me build a visual so that I can talk to something like that. So that when I'm in discussions about AI, it's not simply, deflecting it. It's saying, hey, we can do this, but we need to understand this data set from a CRM, for example, this data set from an ERP, this data set from a CCAS tool set. So it's really about pulling the right data at the right time so that the technology you're deploying does return on that investment. So I think that's it, is that really using the technology sometimes gives you the guardrails or the pitch that you need to really get the idea out there clearly and what that benefit back is. And really, I think being in circles right now, there's so many good webinars out there, so many good groups you can participate in discussions on technology, in med tech, in healthcare, but also in customer service. And again, I think that also is another really great place to kind of bounce off how you're describing these problems, because we are not alone. I think every leader is trying to become as much of an expert as we can, find the right technology to help us implement and unlock the value we see, but also be able to articulate what we're doing and why. So it's a pretty big adventure we're all on, I think, at this moment.